What happens when technology meets diplomacy? On this week's episode, I sit with the only African tech envoy, that is Ambassador Philip Thigo, to talk about all things AI. Last year, it was, this is what AI can do. This year is, we need to see what AI is doing. We talk about AI factories. There is a controversial Kenyan AI bill somewhere. Yes, I'll call it controversial. And most of all, we understand what leadership means and why we need leaders in this changing era of intelligence. Listen to the episode and let us know what you think. That's it from me, Stella Gishuhi. Good morning, Ambassador Philip Thigo.
Good morning, Stella.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Yeah?
Yes.
We see each other on the streets of tech. Now you're sat with me. Right. Let's talk tech and specifically AI.
Got it.
I didn't know much about AI until I heard you talking about AI. And I asked myself, what's this? But you've taken the country along a very exciting journey the last couple of years. You have talked about AI, about skilling, about the need for the country to be recognized. You are honored and recognized at the UN level in guiding that AI conversation. But where we are now, to quote you, we need to let's talk about AI and infrastructure.
Yep.
Yeah? What does that mean from an African perspective, sorry?
So I think part of the challenge around this discussion on artificial intelligence is that it's been led by a few countries.
Yeah.
And mostly it's China and the US.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a lot of us have been trying to catch up. And so there has to be an understanding of AI beyond their articulation of what AI is. And so we have to understand AI from where we come from because they're really advanced in these conversations.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, when I say AI is infrastructure, I try to bring people down to the basics of what you need to do so that we get to understand or articulate what AI is, but also we get to use and to build AI. And so I think if you look at how I frame this is, in most cases, is that we look at AI as a technology, but we don't understand the era within which we live in right now because AI is not new.
No.
AI has been there from the 1950s. But what is different at this time? And I think what is different at this time is that cumulatively, countries that have invested in infrastructure, in digital infrastructure, are the ones that are leading. So when I say AI is infrastructure, I talk about that entire stream because everybody kind of dwells on the application, and not even the application, on
ChatGPT,
exactly.
Claude, oh my gosh.
Claude, or the models. And I don't think that's AI.
It's a part of it, but it's not part of it.
It's not, and it's not useful.
No.
Yeah.
What would you say about the rest of the continent, about the journeys? We're trying, but where would you say, if you were to pull me to the side and say, Stella, I like what you're doing, but I need you to see more or less of?
Yes, again. And so I think part of also the sort of understanding has to be a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
Is that I come again into the era we live right now. So if you look at all the revolutions we've had, whether the first one was steam, second one was electricity, third was automation, fourth was ICT, and ubiquity of it with the fourth industrial revolution, the fifth one is intelligence, right? So you have to be in the moment. And this is something I tell people is that if the currency of this era is intelligence, then that's what you need to be investing in.
Okay.
And you cannot invest in every part of intelligence simply because of capability. And so I take each and every country individually. So some countries, unfortunately, will have more capability than others. But for me, the shortest path towards participating in an intelligent era is knowledge. And so we need to build our knowledge base. And every country can do that. You don't have to have compute.
No.
You don't have to have even crazy electricity or energy, but you can build your knowledge base. And your knowledge base relies on your talent. And I think each African country has a talent base.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And so I think for me, if I take your side, I'd say focus on that. And talent is the shortest path to sovereignty. It is, because not every country can have compute, because not every country has tremendous amount of energy. And we know only 5 or 6 countries can do this: Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, and likely Senegal. Not every country can have data to that extent, because data is what drives AI. But then there's some countries that are small, some countries are big, right? So not every country can necessarily have that huge capability of massive amounts of data sets. But you can build your own data capability, right? But not necessarily large. So I think people kind of go crazy around the large language models. You can also do a small language model. And so I think, again, if I take people aside, is look at what you can do in your own capacity, your own capability, and not try to be like another country. And there's no winning in this. And that's why I tell people that it's unlike the ICT age where everybody was running to digitize. This is different. Because knowledge transacts very differently than the digital era. Because knowledge can be exponential. You can be a small country, but you can be exponential in the era of AI. So if you just invest in that knowledge capacity, I think that's where people need to start.
Okay, so I need to work with what I have, build my knowledge base, and work with what we have.
Work with what you have, and stop competing.
So I should not look at OpenAI and think, oh my gosh, no, I'm in Africa for Africa with Africa in mind. Thank you for that piece of advice. You've touched on investment. That's a term that's used in many spaces that I've been, and I'm sure you use that a lot, and a lot of people have used it with you. Who is investing where, and how can we unlock that investment?
So I think if you look at and this is why we talk about the AI stack, right? So if you look at the AI stack, so AI stack is compute, data, talent, use cases, or what we call, and then there's a fifth one we call model innovations. As in, you have to invest in the models, so that, especially if you are from Africa, where a lot of our languages are not in the current models. So we have to add that fifth one. So I'd suggest you invest in the five. You can't invest only in one.
No, you can't.
You have to invest in compute. You may not own it, but invest in compute in terms of using the compute. Invest in data in terms of building your data infrastructure and data architecture. Invest talent. That's where we really it's the hill we need to die on. Because if you don't have talent, you can't use compute in your context. If you don't have talent, you cannot necessarily digitize. Because then data is contextual. If you don't have talent, then you can't even do the use cases. Because then how do you apply on agriculture, on climate, on education? And then how do you train your own models? Especially in the current dominant kind of model context where a lot of the large language models are not representative of who we are. And so how do you also have the same talent that then can build small language models that are more contextual and can solve our problems, but also understand our local capability and capacity? Models that use less power. Models that can run on devices that are not necessarily, complex or complicated. So I think for me, it's to invest in
that investment pipeline. But where are the investments? How do we compel an investor to say that's not our story and they should invest in us?
Because I think if you talk about investments, especially in artificial intelligence, again, I say people do not understand what AI is. Because a lot of them are talking about investing in the models, in the frontier model companies, right? So it's OpenAI, it's Anthropic. So for them, the bubble was busted when sort of the Eastern models showed you can do this by far less money. Whether it's Quen or DeepSeek. And so I think that's when investors started getting a little bit jittery. But then that's always been a Silicon Valley challenge. Where you're investing in these companies that have valuations that are so high in their initial phases that do not necessarily correspond to usual investments. And so always, for me, when I talk to investors, again, I tell them invest across the stack. I'm not saying invest on the frontier model companies. We're saying invest in infrastructure. There are returns on infra. Invest in energy. There are returns on energy. Invest in talent. There are returns in talent.
Massive returns, actually.
And even those frontier model companies you've seen are fighting for talent. Right? There are investments in the use cases. I think for me, that's where the real money is. Because when you apply AI on a dairy capability, then it exponentially increases output or productivity of dairy. That in most cases brings in more money. So potentially that's why I tell investors, do not look at AI as a software.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So AI is not software.
It's not software.
It's the
not an
entire
app.
stack.
Yeah.
It's the entire stack. And where the model, so a lot of them I see are in the model innovation, which is like the fifth stack.
Yeah.
There are like 4 other pieces that are missing. And I'm not saying don't invest in the model innovations because that's where the frontier work happens, but it doesn't mean that's the only place you are invested in. So I think for me, if you ask me where the investments are, I think the investments are looking at the wrong place to invest.
So we need to re-educate the investor.
Exactly. Investors need to understand what AI is and where the investment cases are, and not just the frontier model companies.
I feel so validated because I remember telling an investor, if you don't invest in infrastructure, the pipeline you require to invest in will not be there.
It won't be there. And remember, the only constant that has been there across the 5 industrial revolutions, and I always tell people, look at the 5. Mm-hmm. If we didn't have steam, we would not have electricity.
Yep.
If we didn't have electricity, we wouldn't have automation.
Exactly.
If we didn't have automation, we wouldn't have the 4th industrial revolution and IoT and Internet of Things. Exactly. And all of that. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have AI.
Exactly.
So, or this age of intelligence. I think, and the first infra that was invested in, still validated to date, still use electricity.
Okay.
Even for AI, it's the differentiator right now. Everybody's talking about energy. So
invest in the energy.
That was the 3rd industrial revolution, right? So I think for me, that's the investment case, not on the software. Software will change.
And you can't treat because I'm reskilling at the moment, and I can't treat an AI project the way I would treat a software project. I'm constantly reading, watching something because it's very different. Now let's take this up a notch. There's World Bank, there's AFDB, there's UNDP. What's their appetite been like around AI investment?
It's quite an interesting conversation. I think it depends on who they are, just in terms of their persona, right? So UNDP, by the very nature of being a development organization, their thinking has always been, so how do you bring those who are in the margins or who do not have access to begin to access this new technology? So that's the mindset. Yeah. And so get those who are in the margins to access AI and use it to solve their problems, but also see how this can uplift people from poverty or sort of move the needle around development, so as UNDP. I think if you look at the FDB and the World Banks, I think for them, being traditionally banks, my sense is that they've come late.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they've come late in the game. Also because of just the kind of legacy mindset, risk appetite and risk portfolio.
Okay.
Because if I tell you invest in compute, a development bank will not understand what that is. And we've had these discussions before. You've seen only, I think, a week ago or a month ago is when you see them start to move.
Yeah.
With the FDB looking at this $10 billion AI fund.
Yeah.
And even then, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing.
Nothing. Why
really
nothing?
10 billion AI, it's nothing. Compared to what OpenAI is raising or what Ian Lekan just raised last week. Or what Mira just raised, Mira Murati, the former OpenAI CEO, you can actually see it. They're struggling.
Yes, I've seen that, yeah.
To the extent of how they build funding or resources for AI.
So reimagining, re-educating, and that will need a whole rethink on their timelines because the loan disbursement timelines vis-a-vis the development of AI, I mean, technology is outpacing.
It does, and the point of this, and that's, I mean, if you've heard me talk, I keep on saying that the rules of this revolution are not the same as the previous ones, and we seem to have come from the previous ones into this one with the same rules. And when I say this one, it's the last 15 years, and so I think this rapid pace of change has challenged how we think or how we even reimagine the rules. On everything, whether it's I mean, and we've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's even understanding what computer is, even in the understanding of it, even in the governance of the entire AI stack, rules just don't apply.
Rules just don't apply, guys. Where's the private sector in all this?
Private sector, again, it depends. It depends on the sector of the private sector. So I think
the sector of the
private sector, right? So if you look at the tech sector within the private sector, they seem to have it all figured out. And even then, And even then for them, it's very much around trying to reinvent themselves, right?
Yeah.
So you've seen, for example, the big tech companies are no longer big tech in AI. You have, it's really the fabs and the labs and the frontier model companies that really are leading in this, right? So you have an OpenAI that almost now is the one powering Microsoft. Or until a few days ago, I think, they're rethinking their agreement. It's been Cloud and Anthropic powering even the military.
Yes.
Now we know.
Is it Anthropic powering?
Anthropic, yes.
Oh, yes.
Now we know, right? From the Pentagon challenges that we saw.
Yeah.
But I think we've seen AI kind of rebalancing the power, even within the tech sector. So that it's the frontier model companies that are now the big tech.
They are.
In my view.
Yeah.
If you go into now your traditional private sector companies, then you see a lot of them are struggling.
Yeah.
So the big manufacturers are struggling.
They are.
All of a sudden, small manufacturers are doing rapid manufacturing, just leveraging on AI, and they're outpacing big manufacturers. Logistics, we've seen a lot of them are being challenged. Folks in geospatial Earth observations, we are hearing GeoAI now. A lot of them are being challenged. A lot of them who had legacy infrastructure, the big software private sector companies, right?
They're being wiped out.
Yeah, a lot of those guys are struggling.
Yeah.
Coders.
Yeah.
If you are a company that depends on coders, again, we are seeing you're struggling. If you're in fast FMCG, people are struggling, it's simply because a little logistics company that now has AI embedded or enabled in them because they can quickly deploy AI.
Yeah.
Has made the big kind of those your big traditional sectors. Media, media are the worst hit. It's to the extent of we've seen like lead influencers or independent media companies now online leveraging on AI to produce amazing shows that are now captive.
And music.
Yeah,
I had a family member create a very beautiful song for me, and I said, "Is this AI?" And I said, "Yeah."
Exactly.
Okay.
So creative and creative economy and creative industry, right? So a lot of them, and we saw the Hollywood strike 2 years ago.
Yes.
And issues around IP and a lot of that. So I think private sector in most cases, I think have been most challenged. One is because, and I think it's both ways, right? So one is because you can do a lot with little, with a few people.
Yep.
So you have to lay off folks. But also there's a part where you have to keep up because then technology keeps on changing, then the industry is changing, things are moving very quickly. We've seen airlines and travel agents.
Yep.
People have agents now booking tickets.
But those agents have been running rogue.
Yeah. Well, it's early stage.
It's early stage,
but then the private sector is being challenged. Banking, fintech.
Yeah.
We've seen issues. So I think for me, if there's one line that I think, if you ask me where's private sector, I'd say a lot of them are being disrupted.
Right, so they're going through their own disruptions.
Yes. The revenues are shrinking, compressing. If you look at media, for example, right? Yeah. So revenues have gone down. Yet other independent media's revenue are increasing. Yeah. So there's a question private sectors have to ask themselves. How come somebody else's revenue are going up while mine are shrinking? And for me, the differentiator is it's that person plus AI. That's the differentiator. That person has been able to harness AI and integrate it into their business process so that they are now getting exponential.
So the next phrase, what I came across this new term, a technological duality. Now with AI, it's you win some, you lose some, but at an accelerated rate. Yeah. Right. Geopolitically, is it a few days ago you were with the AmCham Digital Economy Task Force? Tell us, what was that experience like? How are you positioning Kenya in such a task force? Because, it's going to go straight to State House, I'm assuming. White House, not State House.
Sorry. No, I think the Kenyan posture has been very clear, right? I think it's to recognize that artificial intelligence right now is really the capabilities lie between two countries. Yeah. It's the US and China. It's very clear.
Yes.
And so if you look at folks who have developed and built the stack. Mm-hmm. And so I think our position has always been that for us as Kenya, it's not to choose either or.
What is it?
We don't put ourselves in a way that we have to choose. We don't. First of all, I think, especially when we talk about sovereignty. Sovereignty is not about you choosing other people's identities.
It's about
what matters for Kenya. And I think what matters for Kenya is the best of class. And so, and as a country, we know who we are. I mean, we're not struggling with our identity.
No, we're not.
And so I think for us, the idea then of having a conversation with the Digital Economy Task Force is actually, it was more or less of a consolidation of conversations we've been having with the specific companies. Mm-hmm. There is Google, Microsoft, Anthropic, OpenAI. And it's recognized, which is true, is that US firms are the best of class on AI. And I think for us, it was more or less, so how do we consolidate this? And it's not whether we partner, it's how.
Okay.
And I think for me, and people, I think, kind of confuse that. And I think for us, and the idea of having a chat with that is that finally we've come to a conversation where the US recognizes Kenya as a partner. Mm. And so the how we're going to partner is how can we get the best of class of the entire AI stack from the US companies, right? Okay. So it's cloud computing, it's compute, it's research and development capability and capacity, it's talent. Yeah. We have a lot of Kenyans in American companies. It's also use cases. There's some things we share. For example, healthcare. Okay. Food. So there's some things we're already partnering between Microsoft AI for Good, ourselves, Carlo, and Ministry of Agriculture around how we can leverage AI to improve food systems and food systems innovation. So I think it was very much around, can we consolidate this now? Because we've been doing it with the individual companies so that we can get the best of class of the entire stack.
Got it.
So that, and so how do we kind of take our partnership to the next level around this new intelligent economy? I think we've never had this conversation.
And what would your dream look like? If you had to look into a crystal ball and this work that you're doing and say, I'll be so happy and proud of our work when X happens. What's that X?
I think the X conversation for me is if we become builders and not users of technology, because yes, we say AI right now is being led by a few countries and a few companies. Yeah. But being led for us is fine. Okay. But for us, we are Kenya, we run marathons. I think it's to the extent for us is that, are we able to build? Yeah. Because, as you said, those models are fine, but they're not contextual. Our challenges are different. I always say, if you were to train a self-driving car in Nairobi, it would work in San Francisco.
Actually, it would even work a lot better in San Francisco.
Exactly. If you were to bring the San Francisco Waymo into Nairobi, the car would not move. And so we have something to offer. Yeah. To also the US, in my view, to the extent that we have a lot of capability around training. We don't have legacy challenges. We have a lot of use cases. We have a lot of problems. We do. And so having a lot of problems means we have a lot of use cases. Take a point of case of the floods we had.
Yes.
On Saturday, right? Yes. So I saw a lot of AI applications. Lots of it,
There's a gentleman who uses AI to predict the outcome and predict the floods. And actually,
and flash floods, because a lot of them can do floods. They can do flash floods.
Yes.
Right? So flash floods means you can go very specific. I can tell you, for example, outside, what is this place called? Integrity House. Integrity Center. Yes. Like on Saturday night, you couldn't pass there. Road. Couldn't pass there.
No.
But you see, ideally, other models will not tell you that. But if you do a local model that has, for example, done like the model has looked at the data sets around the elevation, the slopes, the constructions, the lack of green spaces, the drainage and historical data, I would ordinarily tell you that it's not just floods, it's the velocity of the water.
Yes.
That is running right up from State House Road coming down to Integrity House that makes that place very dangerous. Yeah. Which would have made Heron Court not book clients that night because none of their clients
would have showed up.
No, they didn't show up. That's what I'm saying. They couldn't get into the hotel.
It was impassable.
It was impassable, right? And so I think for me that's if you ask me, that's the one thing that hopefully we can do is engage and partner, but then with the best of class, but then be able to build your own contextual models we need to invest in knowledge.
When you say knowledge, do you mean reading? What would please help me unpack that?
Just your fluency.
AI fluency, okay.
Fluency, not even the stack.
Okay.
The entire thing. If you're going to negotiate on compute, you better understand what you're talking about. You better know what you're negotiating, right? Because if you're negotiating on compute only thinking it's the GPUs, you're lost.
You sound like Michael.
Right?
Compute is not just
GPUs. It's not just GPUs, right? So if you send folks to negotiate and they are not fluent even in the language of negotiation or what they're negotiating on, then you will get a bad deal.
Yeah.
And then you'll end up blaming a company that was so happy that the folks they were talking to had no clue what they were talking about, right? So again, I come back to that piece, which is why I tell every country at least needs to invest in knowledge. And I think the president says it very well. Because there's a quote he told us that no country or person can develop beyond their knowledge capacity.
True.
You just can't. You're limited. And so do not necessarily blame people for your limitations.
Thank you.
And so how do you continuously update, skill, reskill, upskill, improve your fluency around these terminologies, but also your basic and common understanding, so that when you're negotiating from the understanding of the subject matter, but also understanding of your own context. Yeah. Because otherwise, sometimes you end up with a white elephant.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question. It's a hot one. Feel free not to answer, but I'd love for you to answer. There's a draft AI bill floating somewhere. And when you read that bill, I put it down after I read an AI commissioner or a regional AI commissioner. I don't know those languages in there. Has that bill been drafted with knowledgeable people, or is it just being put out there for the sake of being put out there? Or, let me be diplomatic and say we are in the preliminary stages. Therefore, there needs to be a lot more conversation going into it. Whilst I'm very tempted to attack, I also need to be diplomatic.
No, and I'll say honestly, I don't know where that bill came from, honestly. I will say it's not part of our strategy.
No.
It's not. I'll just answer that.
Because it goes against everything you talk about and advocate for.
But it's not part of our strategy. I mean, we have a timeline. Yeah. We started with the AI principles last year. We went into doing an AI strategy. We're in the middle
of an AI policy. Yeah. So
a bill was not part of it.
Yeah, I've heard your conversations. You've always been pro maturity, innovation, build your talent.
But also, it's not yet time. To do a hard law. Yeah, because we said we want to test a lot of these things first. Because AI, as I said, is not like any other technology, and we don't think also one bill covers AI. No, because as you said, if you look at the stack, right, there's talent, which is education, which means you still have to reform the education system. Exactly, yeah. There's energy and power. It means you have to there's investments. There's taxes in terms of the components of the AI stack. Yeah. You know, AI touches every aspect of society that I seriously don't think one law covers it. Covers it. We still need to evaluate. And that's why we are going through the policy process so that, and through public participation, it's been really engaging, including all sectors, which is still ongoing so that we can understand the AI opportunities and risks. Yeah. You can't just all of a sudden come up with a bill because of a risk. That's true. You know, it's not who we are. So there needs to be given more time into that bill and whoever. Yeah. And okay, fine. Data localization is part of that stack, right? Yes. Is it protective or is it protectionist? Well, I think if when we talk about data localization. Well, if you look at how we look at our data, right, and this part of the data protection legislation, right, it just says you need a copy. You need a copy. You at least need a copy of that data in country. Yeah. And that should be fine. Yeah. So I don't think localization is a challenge in my view in the context of the current law. It's not prohibited to the extent of how we understand or manage our data. Mm-hmm. I honestly think we need to move beyond protection and localization to management of data, because the challenge right now around building AI models is not about data protection. We don't even know how to manage our data. So we need a data act? Not really. We actually don't. I think for me it's more, and we talk about this issue around data values. Yeah. We need to figure out how to create value around our data. So if you were in the airport on Saturday at 11 p.m., it didn't rain. But if you were to get to Parkside, which is where Oliseren is, it started to rain then. The minute you get to Nyayo Stadium, it was pouring.
Yeah.
So
Nairobi
think about
for
it.
You. Yeah.
So think about it, right?
Yeah.
So, but think about how many base stations were there in between the airport and Nyayo. Those base stations collect weather data. Base station is the cell tower.
Oh, okay.
The cell tower collects weather data. And it collects weather data for operations. Because when there's a lot of rain, it can automatically boost the signal. So it's just efficiency.
Got it.
But it's not for any. So imagine that Safaricom or Airtel base station could have shared that data to make that weather data available at a very granular level.
Got it.
And it would cost them
nothing.
Because it's for operations. So that's the social value of that data. Then there's economic value of the data, which means that data has business sense for that company, as in they make money out of that data. Safaricom wallet.
Yep.
Right? So they use that.
Yeah.
And then there's the developmental value of the data, which means you spend money to develop that data.
Got it.
So if you do the three, it means you can actually cost the data. Which then makes it easier to share that data because you understand the value. Because then you're sharing that data, either you put it behind a paywall because it is costing you, or it can be for public good, which means can be released for free, that it can help the public or public value. And we've seen it. I mean, Rescue, which is a ambulance company here in Kenya, built their entire practice on top of Uber data.
I didn't know that.
Uber mobility data. Uber released that data.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Rescue now can avail an ambulance instantly, and the response time is 15 minutes from 169 minutes. And so it means, and that's what I'm saying, it means we need to have a conversation on the data value, on the value of data. In that way, you see, you're open to share the data because you understand.
Understand the value. Yeah. But you've been championing that conversation for a while, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
What's not happening? What are we not doing as a people?
It needs to happen at scale, right? It can't be just
it's a side
retail conversation, and that's why we're doing the white paper, so that we can get folks. And for me, that is why I said for Kenya it needs to be a different conversation. It needs to be that discussion because that's what everybody has a problem with. That you want me to give me data, but then I spent money building it. There's IP issues involved. So then let's have a real conversation on the value of data. Right? And so if everybody understands, then it means we can build a platform where data can be exchanged based on its value. Very simple.
Very simple, but anyway, so there has to be a start. There has to be a start. The information warfare, the information battlefield. We've talked about the good side of AI, the data, who's not doing what, who should be doing it. But things are about to go south if they haven't already in certain worlds you sit in. What do we need to do differently?
I think, again, let's go back to knowledge, and I'll keep on circling back into the knowledge. And I like
that you're doing that.
So you have to go back into the knowledge, right? So part of your understanding information, misinformation, disinformation is, first of all, you understanding what is real, what is not. Right? And so if you don't have the knowledge to discern the reality or lack of a shared reality, then there's a problem. I think one is that there's a responsibility. And this is something I think in our role as in the UNAI advisory body, we were very clear with the big tech companies that the only people who will know from the onset that information is not real is the company within which that information is being produced.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is, can there be a policy, even from the company, that information is labeled synthetic or fake, or manipulated or whatever. So and they have a way to do this. We've seen TikTok has started to do that.
Yes.
And so I think it starts right from there. And this is why we say it's not about stifling creativity. It's that people being very open to label that information.
Yeah.
So that the consumer knows that information is real or not real.
The big companies are doing it, but what about the African companies or, that individual who wants to run a very dirty disinformation campaign? Because now that's not a company, that's an individual who's out to...
But they still run it on a platform. That's the point, right? So I think the platform has a responsibility. And we've seen, again, I go back to TikTok, with the TikTok Safety Summit last week.
Yes.
And we've seen TikTok has come a long way.
Yeah, a company can only do so much, the individual. And what do we need to do to that individual who, I call them a merchant of mayhem?
That should be a cost. And I think
that's the question I should be asking, yeah.
Where we, I think, are not being very clear is that every piece of misinformation, disinformation, or deepfake has an economic incentive. And I have a sense that a lot of the punitive measures do not look at the economics.
Okay.
They look at the penal nature of it, right? So that, you'll be jailed for 20 years.
Yeah.
Or pay a fine, X. I think we must make the cost of misinformation very expensive.
Right.
So that, because that is the incentive.
Got it.
Even if you see post that is of a political nature, it is still being underpinned by an economic incentive. Nobody just does a political post just because they hate the other candidate. There's always money driving that. Okay. And that's a proven study. So you must make the cost very high. I would put a serious fine.
So it's like, what, $1,000 for every 10x?
Yeah. There has to be a way we can calculate the cost because of the irreparable harm to society, irreparable harm to reputations
and families,
but also breach to democracy, rule of law, human rights. And so I think unless we make it expensive,
it's less
to the individual. Companies will pay.
Yeah, companies can afford it, but to the individual, I'll fine you 150k shillings if you do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and again, as we said, the goal is not to control information. Yeah. The goal is about information integrity and preservation of societal norms and people's individual rights and freedoms. I think there has to be a cost.
Knowledge. From the onset, it's been knowledge. Do you sometimes feel like you can just go in and whip everybody to act?
It's annoying, but...
we've been very different. Do you just look at the things, guys? We're in the age of the internet. You can research this, but they just refuse to. Or competing priorities as well. Could that be a deterrent?
Actually, no. I think it's leadership.
Okay.
I think it's leadership. Again, if you look at companies that are excelling in this era, it has to do with leadership. It has to have done with how a CEO or our board or how a cabinet or our president has been able to move a little bit differently. Understanding that this era requires kind of a different approach on how you either make investments, how you make decisions, your risk appetite, your innovativeness, where you invest, how you champion specific aspects, right? So I think in most cases it's leadership. Secondly, again, I think Hollywood has done a number of a lot of us, which is what I say.
How so?
It's a trust issue, right? So we live in an era of diminished trust. So people are less trusting right now.
Okay.
Including untrust and lack of trust, builds fear. So a lot of folks spending a lot of time living in their fear. So when I say we seem to have a challenge of imagination, is actually because people are afraid. And you're afraid of, AI will take over the world. Okay. We will lose our jobs. Okay. But then this is not the only revolution that has come with job losses.
Yeah.
It's not.
So go back to history.
Yes. It's not. When the printing press came, it doesn't mean journalists lost jobs.
No. They pivoted, reskilled, or just left entirely and went elsewhere.
Were able to come into the printing press and do mass newspapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity for everybody.
Again, this era, like any other era, will have winners and losers. Right? And so whoever will be a winner in that particular inverted quotes is who has been able to understand the uses of it.
Yeah.
the misuse of it, and then the missed use. And the misuse for me is the biggest one, right? If I do not use AI, what is the cost of not using it?
Misuse.
Versus use, misuse, misuse.
Use, misuse,
the third one is the worst.
Okay.
The third one is always the worst.
It's
the
always the
opportunity
worst.
cost. The cost of inaction. And people don't quantify that.
Yeah.
And that is where people are right now. Oh, we lose jobs. So you're not acting. And you'll just wait for jobs to be lost.
No, get on the internet,
but
watch
that's
a
what
YouTube
everybody's
video,
doing, right?
Download books, PDFs.
So just invest in
It's going to be
capacity.
tough.
Invest in capacity, invest in knowledge, invest in infra, invest in just understanding the trajectory of this technology.
Yep, I agree.
With your vertical, right? So where will you as a media house be in this trajectory of this technology, and what do you need to do very quickly?
What do I need to do?
To pivot, but you can't just not act.
No.
And that is what I see with a lot of our companies here.
Yeah, adapt or die, pretty much. When Agile came out a few years ago in the UK, it was change or die. Now it's adapt or die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think there's again, it boils down to leadership.
Yeah.
Because who has to make those decisions? It's a leader who has to make those decisions, right? So if the CEOs don't do it, if the CFOs don't do it, the CIOs don't do it, then who's going to do it? And so I have a tendency of not understanding why people blame AI. If it wasn't AI, it would have been something else. It was COVID in 5 years ago.
It was the elections a few years ago.
So we blame COVID. So everybody would just, when people are going online and you're just sitting around waiting for COVID to end.
True.
So they'll always tell folks that we live in an era of uncertainty. And people have to be comfortable with uncertainty. You have to be comfortable.
No.
Because something will happen. Right now, there's a war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Something will happen. There will always be something coming at global scale that will challenge businesses or governments or countries or individuals. And that's the era we live in right now.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of uncertainty. But so will you not act because of uncertainty, regardless of whether it's a tech thing, whether it's a pandemic thing, whether it's a health thing, whether it's a food thing, whether it's a weather thing?
Yeah.
I mean, we just got floods in Nairobi City.
Or a food thing.
Exactly, a food thing. So how do you have leadership that can navigate? It's about navigation. It's not about certainty.
No.
It's about navigation. It's navigation and resilience, right? So how will you build your resiliency, but also your navigation capacity so that you can navigate your company, your business, your country, yourself.
Your mental state.
Yourself through uncertainty. And we've seen folks who are navigating this are the ones who are flourishing. Okay.
So you're flourishing.
Yes, I am.
Unapologetically flourishing.
I'm one of them.
I love this. I want to wrap this up, but before we wrap this up, you have been very vocal as well. Gosh, you're vocal about a lot of things. You've taught us a lot. Techplomacy. Techplomacy.
Yep.
I've had the pleasure of sitting in one of the many forums you've created around the Techplomacy Connect, you call it. What are you hoping to achieve? What's your wow, I did that, guys?
Well, it's not about me.
It's not about you, but sometimes you just have to say, I did that. I had a vision. I've executed it. This is the Techplomacy agenda.
I think if you look at Techplomacy and the idea behind Techplomacy is understanding that technology has become integrated and integral to diplomacy.
Yeah.
And not diplomacy in that I'm just an ambassador, so potentially this is how things align. That's how God works. But I think there's definitely a conversation that technology companies have become almost as large as countries. And the current multilateral system does not recognize that. Again, let's go back to the rules have changed.
Yeah.
And the rules of the previous revolutions do not apply. So you have $5 trillion companies that are now running big infrastructures that even are telling member states, even if you have the money, I will not sell you. Right? So, or you have a company that is a $3 trillion company that has 15 million of your citizens on that platform, either monetizing or engaging.
Are we talking about ChatGPT?
No, this is Meta. This is Meta.
This is
Meta. Okay. TikTok is 17 million now. Kenyans.
Kenyans alone.
ChatGPT, as you know, Kenyans are the number one users of ChatGPT, but for emotional advice or for companionship, right? So you have companies that are captive of your citizens.
Captive. That's the word.
Of your citizens. And so you think you will not engage with them. And so that's where diplomacy comes in, is understanding that companies are so big right now that they are almost akin to countries or multilateral organizations. And so you have to engage with them as if you're engaging with your previous counterparts, right? So that engagement means that there has to be a dialogue on how you govern. Because as I said, you have almost 15 or 17 million of your citizens in that, or are spending more time on that company's platform than even other things in your country. Like Kenya, 4 hours and 13 minutes every day. Kenyans spend on social media more than any other country in the world. How will you not engage with those social media companies? Because again, your citizens are captivated and are spending a lot of time on those platforms. And those platforms shape opinions, shape identity.
They do. Shape behavior.
Now we shape behavior. And so I think for me, that's diplomacy, right? So then it means, how do you then navigate those subjects, whether it's misinformation, disinformation, whether it's climate, whether it's rule of law, whether it's democracy, whether it's businesses, whether it's creating economy, that you need to engage with those companies and bring everybody on board. So breaking your traditional multilateral member state to multi-stakeholder engagement. So I think for me, that's diplomacy. And hopefully, as you said, what we hope to achieve, I think, is people to understand that that's the shift.
Right.
The shift is from multilateralism to multi-stakeholder.
Yeah.
And multi-stakeholder in a way that you reinforce the rules-based system.
Okay.
Because everybody now does rules.
Yeah.
The platforms have their community rules.
We need to have them.
But they have their community rules, which are stronger than your national law sometimes. And sometimes there's a clash between your national laws and your community rules. And so how do you create an alignment? And that's why you see me engaging a lot of these companies, is just to align.
National laws.
Where the two are not saying different things, so that then it leads to confrontation.
Got it.
I call it going beyond the adversarial democracies. Democracy should not be adversarial because the platform says they are democratic.
Yeah.
Kenya says it's democratic.
Yeah.
So should we be careful so that our democracies are not adversarial? We have to recognize that particular aspect. And again, I keep on saying rules have changed. And so how do we get ourselves in there? And that's why you see for Kenya, unlike other countries, we don't have a clash.
No.
We have a platform to engage. And so every time there's potentially a flashpoint, you'll see me engaging with the tech companies. And so you'll never see an extremity of a shutdown or, you'll never see it.
And I want to top up. We have you. Let's just say that. Yeah. So we're lucky.
Again, leadership, right?
Yes, we have you.
To the president, right?
Our president saw the need to have your position. You're the one in that position.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. And you are the first and only one on the continent here.
Which is a sad thing, but
it's not sad for us.
I guess countries will think about it.
I guess the rest of the countries need to get themselves an Ambassador Philip Thigo. Well, thank you.
Not me, somebody else. Their own version.
Their own version of you. Okay, their own version of you. Well, thank you so much for all the knowledge. I've learned quite a bit. And thank you for honoring our invite.
No
For our listeners, that has been Ambassador Philip Thigo, the first and only tech envoy from Africa.